Hi, in this video we'll continue talking about Excel pivot tables. Now if you don't know what those are, I strongly recommend you watch my previous video as I've covered the very basics there. This will essentially be a continuation to that video as we'll be dabbling into more advanced features of pivot tables. After watching this video and the previous video, I promise you that you'll get a fundamental understanding of how pivot tables work and how you can utilize them for your data analysis projects. So without further ado, let's continue. We were left off with these pivot tables here, and we had a boss that was asking us a lot of questions. So we'll continue with that. For now, let's imagine that we want to update our original dataset and we want to add more information with a brand new customer segment. Now, since our original dataset is in a tabular format, we created a table. It's just a matter of going to the very bottom of our table, adding new cells, and just like that, all of our pivot tables will be updated. To prove it, let's create a new customer segment called individual. All of the subsequent cells will also be individual. Let's come back to our pivot tables. Now to update our pivot tables, we have to go to Pivot Table Analyze tab, refresh all. And as we can see, an individual segment has appeared. This only works if our original dataset is in a tabular format, if it's a table. If it's just a data range, this will not work. So this is why it is very important that your very first step that you do before creating any pivot tables is that you make sure that your dataset, your original data frame, is in a tabular format. It's a table. Okay, moving on. All right, so the very next thing our boss asks us to do is to create an intuitive tool for him to be able to access all of this information in different time frames. Maybe he only wants to access this information for a single month or a single day or a quarter. So Pivot Tables has a great tool for that. We click on any of our pivot tables. We identify the box that refers to the date. So in our case, it's order date. We right click on it and click Add as Timeline. Now this slide bar has appeared, and as you can see, it's an intuitive way to just drag the information, and all of the pivot tables will be updated accordingly. Since our data frame only has information for the first 6 months, it only has information for quarter 1 and quarter 2. But we can change it to display months, so we can select whatever month we want. We can display days and years, whatever. By default, just like with slicers, these filters only work for the pivot tables that they were created from. If you want to attach this filter to all of your pivot tables, you have to click on this filter, click on the timeline bar, then report connections. This is a similar process that we had with slicers. We simply tick all of the pivot tables that we have, click OK, and now whatever the time frame we choose, all of our pivot tables will be affected. So we add this to our collection of tools. Moving on. So the very next thing our boss wants us to do is to identify the top 10 most profitable clients. First things first, as always, we copy and paste our pivot table. We drag away any fields that we don't need. Now we find the customer name row and we find the profit, drag it to values. There's a very intuitive way in pivot tables to do that. We just right click on the pivot table anywhere on one of these cells. We find the filter tab and we have this top 10 tool. We click on it and then we can select however top items that we need and how we want to sort them. So we click top 10, okay, we have our top 10. As we can see, they're sorted in a random way. We would like the first one to be the most profitable one, so we just right click on this cell, we click sort, sort largest to smallest. Now it's just a matter of changing the formatting of these cells. Number format. Let's do accounting this time. Okay. Okay, so that's how you do the top 10. All right, so the very next thing our boss asks us to do is to split all of our products into different price segments and identify how many products we have in those segments. So as always, we begin by copying and pasting our pivot table, and we drag away everything we don't need. We find the unit price column, drag it to rows. As we can see, we have a bunch of different prices for a bunch of different products. Then we need a count for each of these price ranges. So how many products we have in each of these ranges. So we find sales. By default, it's sum of sales. We want it as count. So we click count. And now this isn't very informative. But what we can do is to make them to fit them into different ranges. So we right click on one of these cells. We click group function. And then we can identify where the range starts and where it ends and what is the increment that we have to increase the range by. Let me show you. We begin by 0. We end with a nice number, which is 6,800. And we increase it by, let's say, 500 or maybe 200. Yeah. Now we see we have these groups of products. These are the values of their prices and how many products we have in these groups. We have a lot of products in this 0 to 200, so maybe we could increase the increment up to a 50 so that it's more split out. That's how you group with pivot tables. After showing what we've done, our boss is finally happy with our pivot tables and with the insights that we've gained. He now asks us to visualize them, to create a dashboard so that he can show all of these findings to his stakeholders. Now, we won't be going into the intricacies of making dashboards and custom visualizations. There's just several things that I want you to understand about pivot tables. So first, let's create a simple chart. Let's select our first pivot table, create a bar chart. As mentioned, I won't be going into the style of this chart. Let's leave it as it is. But what I want us to see is that if we adjust both of our filters, which is a slicer and a timeline, to all of our pivot tables. So let me just quickly make sure that they're attached to all of our pivot tables. Yes, now they are. Now, whatever changes we make in these filters, in either the slicer or the timeline, our visualization changes. Now, to emphasize this, let's create another visualization for this pivot table right here. Let's create a line chart. And we have two visualizations at the same time. And if I select different filter options like this, all of our visualizations that are connected to these pivot tables are being updated at the same time. You can imagine that this is a very powerful tool when you have a dashboard of like 10 or 15 different charts, and with just a single click of a button, of a slicer or of a timeline, all of the visualizations change. So it makes it a very intuitive tool for any business analyst to dig into all of your company information. So if you want to see how I make these dashboards from scratch, these customized style dashboards, I've made several videos about that, so please do check them out. I would like to thank you for watching this video. I hope you've learned something new. And if you did, please consider liking this video, subscribing, and dropping me a comment. I would really appreciate if you could comment on what you want me to do next, as there's so many topics and it's really tough for me to choose by myself. Anyway, thanks once again, and I'll see you guys in the next one.